This week, from April 16th to April 23rd, 2025, many important things happened around the world. It was a very busy week for news. There was sad news from the Vatican. There was some hope for peace between Russia and Ukraine. Problems grew between the United States and China. The U.S. government also said it might close almost 30 American embassies and consulates in other countries. In Canada, people got ready for an election on April 28th. Political parties shared their plans. Fighting continued in several places. Money news was also important. The UN and IMF worried that trade fights could hurt the world economy. People celebrated Earth Day on April 22nd and Easter on April 20th. There was news about technology, including new artificial intelligence, or AI. It was also a big week for sports. And now let's dive in. 2. Sad news and hope. This week there was very sad news from the Vatican. Pope Francis died on Monday, April 21, 2025. He was 88 years old. He died because of a stroke. He died in his home in the Vatican called Casa Santa Marta. Cardinal Kevin Farrell told the world the sad news. Pope Francis was the leader of the Catholic Church for 12 years. He was known for helping poor people and people who moved to new countries, called migrants. He also cared a lot about protecting our planet, the environment. Pope Francis was special because he was the first pope from Latin America. He was also the first Jesuit pope. He became pope in 2013 when the Vatican had some problems. He tried to make the church more open to everyone. Sometimes his ideas were different from what some other church leaders thought. In the last year, Pope Francis had some health problems. Earlier in 2025, he was very sick with pneumonia. He stayed in the hospital for 38 days. People were very worried about him then. Leaders from all over the world sent messages after his death. They shared their sadness. U.S. President Donald Trump said he was sad, even though he sometimes disagreed with the Pope about things like immigration. President Trump said he will go to the Pope's funeral. The funeral will be in the Vatican on Saturday, April 26th. Many people will be able to see Pope Francis starting on Wednesday before the funeral. Many church leaders and country leaders will travel to the Vatican for the funeral. In Argentina, where Pope Francis was born, many people went to the big church in Buenos Aires to remember him. Now the Vatican must prepare to choose a new pope. This is a very important time for the Catholic Church, which has about 1.4 billion members around the world. There was also some news that gave people hope this week. Russia and Ukraine showed they might be ready to talk directly about peace. This could be a big step after more than 3 years of fighting. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said late on Monday that his country is ready to talk. He said Ukraine is ready for talks about a ceasefire. A ceasefire means stopping the fighting. He especially talked about stopping attacks on places where normal people live and work, like power plants or homes. On Tuesday, a spokesperson for the Russian government, Dmitry Peskov, gave a response. He said that some parts of Ukraine's idea make sense to discuss with Kyiv. This was a small sign that Russia might also be willing to talk. These signs of talks came after Russia announced a short stop in fighting for Easter. This truce was for 30 hours. But both Russia and Ukraine said that the other side did not follow the rules of the truce. Even with these problems, reports said that the fighting was less strong during that short time. Before the truce, President Zelensky had suggested a longer ceasefire for 1 month. He wanted to stop long-range attacks like drone and missile attacks on civilian buildings. Some people think the United States government is encouraging these talks. U.S. President Trump wrote online that he hoped Russia and Ukraine would make a deal. While talks might start, the situation is still difficult. An important group called the Institute for the Study of War said that any agreement must be written down clearly. Everyone must agree to it, and there must be ways to check that both sides follow the rules. President Zelensky also reminded people that Russia has hurt many religious people and destroyed many churches and religious places in Ukraine during the war. 3. Fighting around the world. Fighting in the Gaza Strip continued this week. On April 16th, reports said Israeli attacks killed at least 19 people across Gaza. 10 died in an attack on eastern Gaza City. News also came about 15 paramedics and rescue workers killed last month. A report said they were mostly shot in the head or chest. Their bodies were found together in a large grave. Broken ambulances and other vehicles were found there too. On April 17th, the Israeli army started to make a special security area called the Morag Corridor bigger. They wanted to reach the city of Rafah in the south. People saw Israeli forces destroying buildings in Rafah. On the same day, the Palestinian Civil Defense Group said Israeli attacks killed at least 37 people, including children. These people had already left their homes because of the fighting. This violence happened even though there was news about a possible stop to the war agreed on January 19, 2025. There was also fighting in Yemen. On April 17th, the United States Navy fired missiles at places controlled by the Houthi group. At least one person was killed in Sana'a, the capital city. These attacks are part of actions the U.S. started in March and April 2025. The U.S. is doing this because Houthi attacks have made shipping in the Red Sea dangerous. The U.S. wants to stop the Houthis from attacking ships in this important area. The United States military was active in Somalia too. On April 17th, U.S. planes attacked al-Shabaab fighters in the middle of the country. 12 al-Shabaab fighters were killed. In another attack, a U.S. plane destroyed a boat near the coast. The boat had no flag. The U.S. believed it carried weapons for al-Shabaab. These actions are part of the 2025 Shabelle offensive, a bigger fight against al-Shabaab in Somalia. The situation in South Sudan got worse this week. The country's peace plan is in danger. Nicholas Haysom, the head of the United Nations group in South Sudan, UNMISS, warned the UN Security Council about this. He said the country could fall back into a big war. Fighting increased in early March when a group called the White Army attacked government soldiers in the town of Nasir. Air attacks then killed ordinary people. The situation got worse when the government arrested First Vice President Riek Machar. Mr. Haysom called this a new low. Wrong information and angry words are making people more divided. It feels like the bad times in 2013 and 2016, when over 400,000 people died. The UN is trying to protect people and work with the African Union and IGAD to find peace. China showed its military power near Taiwan this week. From April 18th to April 21st, China held large military exercises around the island. China called them Joint Sword 2025. China's army said it was a strong warning to separatist forces in Taiwan who want independence. Chinese Navy ships, fighter planes, and missile groups practiced attacking targets in Taiwan. Taiwan's government said it saw 47 Chinese military planes and 8 Navy ships nearby during the exercises. Taiwan's president called the exercises irresponsible. The United States, Japan, and some European countries were worried. The U.S. asked China to be careful and calm to keep peace in the area. 4. Money worries grow. This week, there were big problems between the United States, U.S., and China about trade. The U.S. government threatened to put very high taxes on most things coming from China. These special taxes are called tariffs. The government said the tariffs could be as high as 245%. This plan was announced late on April 15th. China's government asked the U.S. to talk and stop the trade fight. A spokesperson for China said that nobody wins in a trade war and that it is bad for everyone. These trade problems caused worries around the world. On April 16th, stock markets went down quickly. People who invest money were nervous about the tariffs. The head of the U.S. Central Bank, Federal Reserve Chair Powell, also spoke about the economy, and his words added to the worries. Technology companies were hit hard. The price of shares in companies like Nvidia and AMD went down. The U.S. also made new rules to stop selling some important computer parts, called semiconductors, to China. This added to the problems for tech companies and made investors more nervous about the future of trade and technology. Because of the trade problems and general economic worries, many companies felt unsure about the future. It was difficult for them to plan or guess how much money they would make. Some companies stopped telling the public about their financial plans for the whole year. For example, the airline company Delta Air Lines said they would not give a full-year plan because the economic situation was not clear. Experts noted that companies often stop giving future guidance when times are uncertain. European car makers also faced difficulties. They rely heavily on China for buying parts and selling cars. The trade tensions made these European companies feel vulnerable to sudden changes. While the stock market had problems, the price of gold went up a lot. On April 22nd, gold reached a record high price. It cost $3,500 for 1 ounce. When people are worried about the economy or the stock market, they often buy gold. They see gold as a safe investment during uncertain times. The fear about the U.S. tariffs and the economy made many people want to buy gold, pushing the price higher. Important international groups also warned about the world economy. On April 16th, the United Nations Trade and Development Group, known as UNCTAD, said that the world's economy might grow much slower this year. They predicted growth of only 2.3%, mainly because of trade tensions. Then, on April 22nd, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, also lowered its expectation for global growth. The IMF predicted growth of 2.8% for 2025. The IMF said the U.S. government's changing tariff plans created serious risks for financial stability around the world. Both the UNCTAD and the IMF were worried that trade fights could slow down economic activity everywhere. There was also bad news from the electric car company, Tesla. On April 22nd, Tesla announced its profits for the first 3 months of the year. The company made much less money than expected. Its profits dropped by 71% compared to the same period last year. Tesla sold fewer cars and faced more competition from other companies making electric vehicles. This news showed how even big companies were facing challenges in the current economic situation. 5. News from countries. Canada is getting ready for an important election. The election day is April 28, 2025. That is very soon. The main political parties are telling people their plans for the country. On April 19, the Liberal leader Mark Carney and the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh shared their ideas. Both leaders promised to spend billions of dollars on things to help voters. The Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, said the Liberal plan costs too much money, but he has not shared all of his party's plans yet. This election is happening because the old Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, left his job in January 2025. Mark Carney became the new leader of the Liberal Party on March 9, 2025. Mark Carney used to be the head of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. 5 parties want to win the election. Nobody knows who will win. The election could change many things in Canada. The United States government is thinking about closing some of its offices in other countries. An internal paper from the State Department suggests closing almost 30 places around the world. This includes 10 embassies and 17 consulates. Most of these offices are in Europe and Africa. Some are also in Asia and the Caribbean. The list includes embassies in Malta, Luxembourg, Lesotho, the Republic of Congo, the Central African Republic, and South Sudan. The paper also suggests having fewer American workers in Somalia and Iraq. If an office closes, another U.S. office in a country nearby would do its work. This idea seems to be part of a bigger plan to make the U.S. government smaller. A group helped by Elon Musk, called the Department of Government Efficiency, is working on this plan. The State Department did not give comments about this paper. The government has only chosen new ambassadors for Malta and Luxembourg, 2 of the places on the list to close. The highest court in the United States, the Supreme Court, made a decision about immigration. It temporarily stopped the government from sending some Venezuelan people back to their country. These people came from Venezuela to the U.S. seeking safety or a better life. An organization called the American Civil Liberties Union asked the court to stop the government action. They wanted to help some Venezuelan men who were being held in Texas. This court decision shows that the judges are looking closely at the government's immigration rules. Some people think the government is using special old laws about wartime in a way that might not be right for immigration today. The government in Greece is giving extra money to help families. The Prime Minister announced a plan worth €1 billion. This money will go to families who earn less money and need help with costs. The government wants to help poorer people and also use the money to invest more in the country's future projects. Romania is preparing for new elections to choose a president. The election days are May 4 and May 18, 2025. These are 2 rounds of voting. The country needs new elections because the presidential elections from 2024 were canceled earlier this year. The reason for the cancellation was not given in the news reports. Many other countries will also have important elections soon, mostly in May 2025. Australia and Singapore will have elections on May 3. Albania will have a parliamentary election on May 11. The Philippines will have a general election on May 12. Poland will choose a new president on May 18 because the current president cannot run again. Venezuela will choose people for its parliament on May 25. Suriname will also have a general election on May 25. These elections will shape the future for people in these countries. 6. Countries talking and arguing. The leader of NATO, Mark Rutte, visited the city of Odessa in Ukraine on April 15. He met Ukraine's President Zelensky. Mr. Rutte promised strong support for Ukraine. He said NATO's support would not change. This was different from the U.S. President, Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump said Ukraine was to blame for the war with Russia. This shows that leaders in NATO have different ideas about the war in Ukraine. Some European leaders strongly support Ukraine, but the U.S. government under President Trump is more critical of Ukraine. The United States and Iran held secret talks about Iran's nuclear plans in Oman. At first, the talks seemed okay and more were planned, but the U.S. position changed fast. President Trump's helper for the talks is Steve Witkoff. On April 15, Mr. Witkoff said Iran could enrich uranium a little bit if checked. But the next day, April 16, he said Iran must stop all nuclear enrichment. Iran said the U.S. must remove sanctions that hurt its economy. Iran's speaker, Esmail Baghi, said removing sanctions was their main demand. This change makes agreement harder. The U.S. put sanctions on people from China and Hong Kong in March 2025. News talked about it in April. The sanctions are against 6 officials. The U.S. says these officials tried to control people outside their country and hurt Hong Kong's freedom. These sanctions show more arguments between the U.S. and China. It affects how the countries talk and trade. China did big military exercises near Taiwan from April 18 to April 21. China's army sent ships and planes. They practiced attacking important places in Taiwan. China called it Joint Sword 2025. They said it was a message to Taiwan groups wanting separation. Taiwan's government said China's actions were not responsible. Taiwan saw 47 Chinese planes and 8 ships nearby. Taiwan wants peace but will protect itself. The U.S. and other countries were worried. The U.S. asked China to be careful. The United States wants to work more with India. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said this. He wants the U.S. and India to work together on defense, military, energy, fuel, and technology computers. The U.S. wants a stronger relationship with India. India is big with a growing economy and army. This helps the U.S. balance China's power in Asia. They talked about projects like the India-Middle East Europe Economic Corridor for trade. Italy's leader, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visited the U.S. She met the U.S. President at the White House. Ms. Meloni wants Italy to have a strong relationship with the Trump government. She wants to be an important European contact for the U.S. This visit could make Italy more important in talks between Europe and America and inside the European Union. 7. People, Earth, and new ideas. This week, people around the world thought about our planet, new technology, and important social issues. On April 22nd, many countries celebrated Earth Day. The main idea this year was our power, our planet. People talked about using more clean energy, like power from the sun and wind, instead of old energy like oil and coal. The goal is to make 3 times more clean electricity by the year 2030. Earth Day events also talked about other problems. In Ghana, illegal mining is hurting rivers. In many places, houses cost more because of weather problems from climate change. People also discussed new ideas, like using electric motors on ships to make the air cleaner. News about Europe's weather showed why these changes are important. A report called the European State of the Climate 2024 came out on April 15th. It said that 2024 was the warmest year ever recorded in Europe. The report showed that Europe had many weather problems last year. There were bad floods, very dry times, strong heat waves, and large forest fires. Scientists said Europe is getting warmer about 2 times faster than the rest of the world. Ice in European mountains is melting more quickly. This affects water for drinking, farming, and making electricity. In science news, some scientists from the United States are planning to move to France to work. A French university said the first group of these refugee scientists will arrive soon. This might be happening because of changes in rules or politics in the United States that affect scientists' work. This move could help science in France. Technology companies shared new ideas too. The company Meta showed its new artificial intelligence, or AI, called Llama 4. AI helps computers think and learn. Meta released 3 new Llama 4 models on April 5th: Scout, Maverick, and Behemoth. These AI models can understand text, pictures, and other information together. Meta lets other people use and change its AI models freely. Apple also added more AI to its products. Its Apple Intelligence system now works in more languages and places, including countries in the European Union. A new tool called Priority Notifications uses AI to show users the most important messages first. Apple is also bringing AI features like writing tools and image playground to its Apple Vision Pro headset in April. There was important news about people's safety and rights. Police in Ivory Coast rescued 33 people from West Africa. Interpol, the international police group, announced this on April 22nd. The people were victims of human trafficking. They came from Benin, Burkina Faso, Ghana, and Togo. They paid criminals up to $9,000 each because they were promised jobs in Canada. Instead, the criminals forced them to do bad things and online scams. Police from Ivory Coast and Ghana worked together with Interpol on this case. They arrested 2 people. In the United States, more than 100 universities are working together to help migrant students. These universities, including some famous Ivy League schools, do not agree with government rules that affect these students. This news came out on April 22nd. It is part of a larger talk about the rights of people who move to new countries. The world also remembered Walter Frankenstein. News of his death was shared on April 22nd. He was a survivor of the Holocaust. During World War II, he and his family hid from the Nazis in Berlin, Germany. His story reminds people about the importance of remembering history. Finally, the United Nations held a big meeting about indigenous people. This was the 24th meeting of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. It took place from April 21st to May 2nd. People at the meeting talked about the problems indigenous communities face around the world. These problems include rights to their land, the effects of climate change, keeping their culture alive, and having enough money. They also talked about using indigenous knowledge to help fight climate change and keeping indigenous people safe from violence. 8. The week ends. This week, from April 16th to April 23rd, 2025, brought many important world events. There was sad news, but also some hope for peace. Fighting continued in several places, and money matters caused worry for many people and countries. The world felt sadness with the death of Pope Francis on April 21st. He was 88 years old. People remembered his 12 years as Pope when he worked to help poor people and protect the environment. His funeral was planned for Saturday, April 26th at the Vatican. At the same time, there was some hope for peace between Russia and Ukraine. Both countries showed they might be ready to talk directly. President Zelensky said Ukraine was ready, and Russia said some ideas could be discussed. This happened after a short stop in fighting for Easter, but both sides said the other broke the rules. Fighting did not stop in other parts of the world. In the Gaza Strip, Israeli soldiers continued attacks, including in the city of Rafah. They started to make a larger safe area, called the Morag Corridor Buffer Zone, bigger towards Rafah. Reports said many people were killed, including rescue workers found in a mass grave. On April 17th, the United States Navy attacked places in Yemen controlled by Houthi fighters because of problems with ships in the Red Sea. American planes also attacked al-Shabaab fighters in Somalia, killing 12 insurgents on April 17th. In South Sudan, problems grew worse as leaders disagreed and fighting increased, putting a peace plan in danger. Money news was big this week. The United States and China had serious problems over trade. The U.S. government threatened to put very high taxes, up to 245% on most things coming from China. China asked for talks to stop the trade fight. These problems made stock markets go down quickly. Markets went up again when the U.S. paused some new taxes for 90 days, but people were still worried. The price of gold went up to a record $3,500 an ounce on April 22nd, as people looked for safe places to put their money. Groups like the United Nations and the International Monetary Fund warned that these trade fights could make the world's economy grow slower. Also, the electric car company Tesla said its profits were 71% lower in the first part of the year. In politics, Canada got ready for an election on April 28th. The U.S. government thought about closing nearly 30 embassies and offices in other countries, mostly in Europe and Africa. A U.S. court stopped the government from sending some people from Venezuela back to their country. The government in Greece gave €1 billion to help families with less money. Romania prepared for new president elections on May 4th and May 18th. Countries also talked and argued. The leader of NATO, Mark Rutte, visited Ukraine and promised support. The U.S. and Iran talked secretly about Iran's nuclear plans, but the U.S. position changed quickly when envoy Steve Witkoff said Iran must stop all nuclear enrichment. China did large military exercises near Taiwan, making neighbors worried. Science and People news included Meta releasing a new AI called Llama 4. Apple added more AI features to its products. Police in Ivory Coast rescued 33 people from West Africa who were victims of human trafficking. Universities in the U.S. spoke out to support migrant students. People remembered Walter Frankenstein, who survived the Holocaust. Earth Day was celebrated on April 22nd. The theme was Our Power, Our Planet, focusing on clean energy. A report showed Europe had its warmest year in 2024. Big sports moments also happened. The 129th Boston Marathon took place on April 21st. John Courier from Kenya won the men's race. His brother won in 2012. Sharon Lokti from Kenya won the women's race with a new record time of 2 hours, 17 minutes and 22 seconds. Marcel Hug won the men's wheelchair race for the 8th time, and Susanna Scaroni won the women's wheelchair race. WrestleMania 41 happened in Las Vegas on April 19th and 20th. Jey Uso became the world heavyweight champion. John Cena won the undisputed WWE Championship for the 17th time. The NBA playoffs started on April 19th. Top basketball teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers and Boston Celtics won their first games. In football, the UEFA Champions League quarterfinals finished on April 16th. Arsenal, Paris Saint-Germain, Barcelona, and Inter Milan moved to the semi-finals. Entertainment news included the original Alice Cooper Band announcing their first new album in 50 years. The Coachella Music Festival in California finished its second weekend. New movies came out, like Sinners with Michael B. Jordan and Mickey 17 with Robert Pattinson, both released on April 18th. It was a week full of different and important events all over the world. Which news story from this week do you think will have the biggest impact in the future?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.